This happened a few years ago. I was 34 and needed a break. I usually took a weekend trip to the mountains to find inspiration for my writing. The trees were tall and the cabin was cozy, perfect for escaping city life. I was excited. The first night, I joined the other campers around the fire. We shared ghost stories, hoping for a fun night. I noticed a woman sitting a little away from us. She looked worried but didn't join in. I tried to catch her eye, but the moment I did, she stood up and walked into the trees. I shrugged it off. Campfire stories can scare people. As the weekend went on, odd sounds echoed in the woods. I heard rustling leaves and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. I figured it was just my imagination. The stories were getting to me. Other campers talked about strange things too. One guy said his gear was missing. Another claimed to have seen a shadowy figure by the edge of the light. I listened and laughed, but I felt a tight knot in my stomach. I didn't want to seem scared. Maybe I was just tired. That next night, while the others told more stories, I saw the quiet woman again. There she was, back at the edge of the light. I felt cold chills. I thought she would leave again, but then she looked right at me. Her eyes were wide and she leaned forward, whispering something I couldn't catch. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I couldn't find my voice. "Watch out," she said quietly, before turning and disappearing into the dark once again. My heart raced. I felt uneasy. The people around me went on with their stories, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I thought I heard rustling outside the light. Nothing was there, but even the trees felt alive. Later that night, I lay in my sleeping bag, trying to sleep. I heard whispers outside the cabin. I listened closely, hoping it was just the wind or animals, but I wasn't sure anymore. I thought of the folklore, wondering if I had wandered into something else. Then I heard it, a thud outside. My heart pounded. I shook it off as my imagination. I glanced outside my window and thought I saw a figure. Just then, a voice broke the silence. "Why are you here?" I turned my head, looking for the source. No one was there. I felt a cold sweat on my skin. Something was wrong, but I didn't want to panic. I lay still, breathing loudly, fearful of what might linger outside. What had I stumbled upon? The stories whispered in my mind. I waited, listening for more sounds. I felt like something was watching. I couldn't shake the feeling, and I realized I was in a tale much darker than I had expected. I spent the night rolling in my sleeping bag, unable to find rest. Every creak of the cabin seemed amplified in the silence, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on me. I thought about the woman and her warning. Had I made a mistake coming here? Was there really something lurking in the woods? Morning finally broke, but the sunlight felt different.
It strained through the trees, barely warming the air. I decided to venture outside. I needed to clear my mind. Maybe a walk would help me shake off this unease. As I stepped out, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. The usual sounds of birds, rustling leaves, and distant chatter were missing. I walked along the trail that led deeper into the woods, hoping to find something familiar that would inspire me. Each step felt heavy, like the forest itself held its breath. As I walked, I thought about the campers. They had talked about their experiences, but I realized I hadn't seen anyone since last night. It struck me as strange. I picked up my pace, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" But there was no answer, just a thick silence that felt suffocating. That's when I saw it, a pile of belongings scattered on the path ahead. It looked like someone had dropped their things in a hurry. A backpack, a couple of water bottles, and a shoe. I felt my stomach drop. This was a sign that something was wrong. I approached cautiously, scanning the surroundings for any signs of life. In the distance, I thought I heard voices, but they were too faint to understand. They seemed to echo around me, dancing just out of reach. My instincts told me to turn back, but curiosity drew me closer. As I knelt to inspect the items, I noticed a piece of paper lying next to the backpack. It was torn, the writing frenzied and unclear. It said, "Don't trust anyone. They come at night." Chills ran down my spine. What had I gotten into? Then, as if summoned by my fear, I heard the rustling again, more pronounced this time. I turned around, heart racing. Everything felt darker, the sunlight now obscured by thick clouds. Shadows stretched, and for a moment I felt dizzy. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering. Silence returned. I stood up quickly, backing away from the path, my pulse quickening. Was I really in danger? Before I could collect my thoughts, a figure appeared from among the trees. It was the woman, the worried one from the campfire.
Her face was pale, eyes wild. "You have to leave. They're coming for you." I opened my mouth to ask who, but the words stuck in my throat as I felt the ground shift beneath me. The once comfortable woods morphed into a realm of terror. The whispers grew loud, wrapping around me like a noose. Then, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer standing in the woods. I was on the dirt floor of the cabin, cold and disoriented. The sunlight poured through the windows, and I blinked, trying to shake off the lingering shadows from my mind. The woman's warning echoed in my ears. "They're coming for you." I scrambled to my feet. Panic surged through me as I realized I was alone again. I rushed to the door and flung it open. The world outside was unnervingly still, but the remnants of the panic still pulsed in my veins. "Hello?" I shouted, hoping for a response. Nothing came.
The trail loomed before me, but instead of comfort, it felt ominous. I knew I had to find the others, if they were still around. Maybe they had left a warning too. Gripping the doorframe, I leaned out, scanning the tree line. "Anyone?" The whispers returned, not in clear words, but in a haunting chorus that sent shivers down my spine. "Get out! She's one of them." My heart raced in response, panic clawing at my thoughts. There was a truth hidden in those whispers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were about me. I took a breath and stepped out into the clearing. The air was thick, almost suffocating. I needed a plan. I thought of heading towards the lake. I remembered it as a gathering point. If someone was around, they would likely be there. With each step, I felt eyes on me, felt myself being watched. I hurried along the path, the uncertainty weighing me down. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I glanced back but saw nothing. Still, I couldn't ignore how the trees loomed closer, how their twisted branches seemed to reach for me. The lake appeared in the distance, its surface still as glass. I quickened my pace, my breath short with rising dread. Just as I approached the water's edge, I spotted movement. A figure in the distance. Was it a camper? "Hey, over here!" I shouted, but the figure turned and disappeared behind a cluster of trees. My heart sank as I faced the reality. Whoever it was, they didn't want to be seen. I felt a stinging sensation in my gut. Should I chase after them, or should I retreat to the cabin? The warnings played in my mind, and suddenly I heard rustling behind me. I spun around, scanning the area. My breath hitched as I noticed something. A flash of red fabric caught between the trees. It was a portion of what looked like a jacket. My legs moved before my mind could catch up. I dashed toward it, desperate to uncover the truth. As I pulled it free, my heart dropped. It was Emily's jacket, the girl who had been sitting with us at the campfire. Realization crept me. Something had happened to her. "Emily?" I called, but the only answer was silence. Suddenly the air shifted. I felt it, a presence closing in from behind. My instincts kicked in. I stumbled back toward the cabin, glancing over my shoulder. I could almost hear footsteps, but they were gone as quickly as they had come. Now, more than ever, I knew I wasn't safe. The hunt was on, and I was the prey. I bolted from the lake, adrenaline propelling my feet down the path. The cabin loomed ahead, but the idea of retreating felt like a death sentence. I needed to think. Just as I reached the door, there was a sudden crash behind me. I whipped around, ready to confront whatever was lurking in the trees, but all I saw were shadows swaying in the wind. "Get it together," I muttered to myself. Panic had a way of trapping me in my own mind, spiraling into thoughts of what could be lurking just out of sight. I stumbled back into the cabin, slamming the door shut behind me. As I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath, the echoes of the whispers returned to haunt me. "She's one of them." I pushed the words away. I couldn't afford to doubt myself. Not now. I had to focus on finding Emily and the others. I scanned the cabin for anything useful. The table in the corner held a mix of supplies left from campers before us, a flashlight, a half-eaten granola bar, and a knife. I pocketed the knife, knowing it might be my only defense. Suddenly, I heard a sound outside, a low, guttural growl. My heart raced. What was out there? I tiptoed to the window, peering through the glass. Shadows danced outside, but nothing was clear. I waited, holding my breath. Then I saw it. A figure moved between the trees, low to the ground, blending into the shrubbery. Panic rushed through me as I realized it wasn't human. My stomach churned with dread. Whatever it was hunting, and I was its target. I needed a plan. I grabbed the flashlight and flicked it on, praying the beam would chase away the darkness. I would have to find another route away from the cabin and head into the woods. Maybe I could find Emily, or at least discover what was happening. With determination, I ventured outside, clutching the knife in my pocket.
The wild silence greeted me like a warning. I took a deep breath, pushing the fear down and focusing. I made my way toward the path that veered left, deeper into the forest. Just as I stepped off the main trail, I froze. Ahead, I spotted a clearing. In the middle of it lay a small campfire, still smoldering but clearly abandoned. My eyes widened as I approached. They had to be around here somewhere. I could feel it. But there was something else in the air, an unsettling sense of wrongness. Suddenly, the growling grew louder, echoing through the trees. My heart raced as I turned to run, but before I could move, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, knife at the ready, only to find myself face to face with Kevin, one of the other campers. "Thank God you're alive," he exclaimed, his eyes darting frantically. "They're here, and we have to go now." Before I could respond, a howl pierced the air, sending chills down my spine. Something was coming. "What do we do?" I shouted over the noise, but Kevin's expression told me everything. We were out of time. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the world reappeared, my vision blurry and disoriented. Panic surged through me. I was still standing in the clearing, but now Kevin was gone. The chill of the air intensified, and I felt the weight of the lingering howl echoing in my ears. "Kevin," I called out, my voice trembling. No answer, just the rustle of leaves and distant howls. I gripped the flashlight tighter, heart pounding in my chest. Something was out there, something dangerous. I took a hesitant step back, feeling the rough bark of the trees closing around me.
I needed to find Kevin. He had known what to do. I strained my ears for any sound through the relentless growls now filling the forest. I started moving slowly, keeping the beam of the flashlight steady ahead of me. I hadn't gone far when I noticed something glimmering among the underbrush. My heart raced as I approached. It was Kevin's backpack, half buried in the leaves. I reached down, my hands trembling. Had he been taken? I unzipped the bag, desperate for clues. Inside I found a water bottle and a map of the area, nothing I could use to track him down. Anger and fear twisted in my stomach. He wouldn't have left it here without a reason. That's when I heard it, a scampering, rustling sound coming from the darkness just beyond the tree line. I froze, flashlight beam flickering nervously. I wheeled around, breath catching in my throat. The growling returned, closer now, vibrating through the ground beneath my feet. Instinctively I turned to run, but a figure emerged from behind a tree. It was hunched low, matted fur covering its emaciated body. Its eyes glowed in the light, a predatory glint that sent a wave of terror coursing through me. I stumbled back, colliding with Kevin's backpack, the weight of it grounding me as I fought the primal urge to flee. This couldn't be real. Whatever it was, it looked both animal and something more, seriously wrong. My mind raced as I remembered the whispers, the doubts that had invaded my thoughts. She's one of them. Had I been tricked into believing this was just a camping trip? This wasn't just a nightmare, it was a waking horror. The creature crouched lower, ready to pounce. I remembered the knife in my pocket. Fighting my instinct to do nothing, I pulled it out, trembling but determined. If it came at me, I had to be ready. Before I could react further, a loud crack split the air, and the creature froze, its gaze shifting. I was able to see it more clearly now. A snarl revealed teeth far too sharp for a normal animal. Then it pounded into the trees, disappearing like a shadow, but I knew it was still out there. Still shaken, I turned to run back towards the cabin. I needed to find shelter, somewhere secure. I had to warn the others, if they were still alive. But I didn't want to be lured into the woods again. What if something worse was waiting? As I sprinted back, each step heavier than the last, I felt the eyes of the forest upon me. Whatever hunted me wasn't done yet. Then I heard a crash behind me. That was when I saw it. Not just the creature, but figures emerging from the darkness. More than one. I skidded to a stop, heart in my throat, as they stepped into the light. I was not alone anymore. I should have kept running. My instincts screamed at me to turn and flee, but my feet refused to budge. The figures emerged slowly, shapes sliding out from the shadows like they were born from the darkness itself. They moved with an unsettling grace, eyes fixed on me. "Get away from me!" "Kevin!" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice cracked on the last word. The flashlight flickered again, and I stomped my foot, willing it to stay lit. A dim beam illuminated the creatures standing there. They resembled people, but their skin was stretched too tight, and their faces bore expressions too twisted to belong to normal humans. "Help us," one of them rasped, its voice a harsh whisper. It reached out a hand, fingers unnaturally elongated. The air turned thick, and the words hung between us like a net. My stomach churned. I took a cautious step back. "No, you're not You're not real. My heart thudded loudly in my ears as I shook my head, trying to break the spell. These were the twisted souls of the forest, a nightmarish version of the campers I had come to know. Where's Kevin? The creature seemed to recoil at the name, its gnarled features twisting into a grimace. He wanted to leave, but he didn't understand. It hissed, eyes glinting with something dark. They took a step closer, their collective presence heavy and suffocating. A low growl rumbled from the shadows, and I realized the creature I had seen before was back, slipping silently along the tree line, just out of the light. I could feel it drawing nearer, as if sensing the tension rising. The creatures before me still hesitated, but spoke in ragged unison. The forest wants you. Suddenly I felt panicked. I whipped around and bolted, adrenaline propelling me forward. Behind me the sounds of footsteps followed, heavy and relentless. I tore down the narrow path, dodging branches and roots, my breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. I barely caught a glimpse of the cabin through the trees, a dim beacon in the rising dread of night. I could hear them still, the whispers clawing at my back, urging me to turn. And then I heard something worse, another crash from the woods, like something large had just barreled through the underbrush. My flashlight flickered again, and then blackened entirely. I stumbled, fear spiking, and I reached for the knife as I continued to sprint toward safety. I finally burst into the clearing where the cabin lay, heart racing and lungs burning. I tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Frantic, I shoved my shoulder against it, throwing my full weight behind it. It creaked open, and I stumbled inside, gasping. The cabin was dark and silent. Guys, are you in here? I yelled, my voice echoing. Panic surged when I received no answer. I quickly slammed the door and grabbed a heavy chair, wedging it under the door handle. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping against the window. I felt my blood run cold. I held my breath and turned slowly to face the sound. As I edged toward the window, a shadow slipped past the corner of my vision. I wasn't alone in here. I jotted my thoughts down frantically on a notepad I found on the table, realizing I needed to remember everything. My mind felt chaotic, and the tapping grew louder.
My heart raced in anticipation. Then the door rattled. Something was trying to get in. I didn't know how much longer I could hold out. I could see a shape now, something small and distorted, peering in through the window, mouth opening wide, revealing rows of crooked teeth. And even worse, I realized, whatever had taken Kevin might already be inside, waiting. I had to prepare for what would come next. I pressed my back against the door, half expecting it to splinter apart any moment. The rattling intensified, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the creature at the window. The moonlight revealed it better now. Its body was thin and stretched unnaturally. The smile it wore was far too wide, like it was mocking my fear. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. My breath hitched. I wished I could grab the knife and prepare for a fight, but it felt useless against the unknown horrors lurking in the shadows. Straining my ears, every creak of the cabin felt amplified. Every rustle outside was a potential threat. I noticed the table next to me was gathering dust. No signs of anyone else having been here for a while. Had Kevin and the others left me? Or had something worse happened? The thought twisted my stomach. The door rattled again, this time with more ferocity. I squinted through the cabin's dim, too quiet interior. I couldn't afford to lose my focus. I needed to think clearly. I decided to check if there was another exit, a window maybe. I quickly turned, but my foot caught on something on the floor, sending me tumbling to the ground. As I scrambled up, a loud crash echoed through the cabin. The front door burst open. It looked like the chair had been flung aside as if it were a mere stick. My heart jolted in my chest. The figure that entered was larger than before, a vague outline against the dark. It moved slowly, and with each step, I felt an overwhelming dread crawl up my spine. "Help us!" it rasped again, but this time it was louder, more insistent. "Get away from me!" I shouted, my voice sharp and desperate. I backed away, bumping into the table. My hands frantically searched for something, anything I could use as a weapon. A glint caught my eye. It was the knife, discarded by my frantic movements. I reached for it, gripping it tightly. My mind raced. If the creature was here for me, I had no choice but to confront it. Then the tapping returned, but louder, more insistent. I shot a glance back towards the window. Another creature was trying to push its way through, distorted and twisted, its eyes wild with hunger. I felt trapped, as if the cabin had become a cage, ready to consume me whole. Just as the larger figure advanced, I made a split-second decision. I hurled my knife towards the window, hoping to give myself a chance. It lodged into the frame where the creature was forcing its body through. A screech of pain erupted from it, and it recoiled, thrashing against the glass, while the bigger figure lurched toward me.
In that instant, I bolted for the back of the cabin, adrenaline coursing through me. I found a small door that led to what appeared to be a storage room. I threw it open and ducked inside, trying to steady my racing heart. The room was dark and cramped, but from the dim light I could see tools scattered about. Axes, ropes, even old camping gear. I crouched behind some old crates, listening closely. Heavy footsteps echoed outside, and I hoped I was hidden well enough. I had to remind myself to breathe. Whatever was out there was still coming for me, and there was no telling how many had entered the cabin. I needed to plan my next move, but before I could assess the situation, I heard a soft, familiar voice call out. "Help us." The sound made my blood run cold. It was Kevin's voice, lingering at the edge of the construction. I felt a mix of relief and dread, not knowing if he was truly there. I had to find out, but did I dare confront whatever had taken him? I prepared to move, uncertainty gnawing at me as I wondered what awaited outside those boxes. I took a deep breath, but before I could act, a shadow stretched under the door. My heart dropped. The bigger creature was closer than I thought, and I wasn't ready for what would happen next. The shadow lingered, stretching across the floor like a dark omen. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find me. The heartbeat in my ears drowned out every other sound, and I almost didn't hear the faint scraping on the door. It was close enough that I could almost feel its breath seeping through the cracks. "Tss, thing," I whispered to myself. The familiar voice beckoned again, but it sounded distant, almost muffled. I forced myself to focus. Kevin needed me, but was he still himself? Just then, the door creaked open a fraction, enough for a sliver of light to spill into the storage room. I braced myself, knife clutched tight. I couldn't let it take me. Whatever horror it was, I would fight back. In a moment of sheer desperation, I flung myself to the side as the door swung wide. I braced for impact, but instead of an attack, I heard a low growl mixed with a gurgling noise that crawled under my skin. I risked a glance. The creature that stepped through the door had elongated limbs and dark, soulless eyes. It seemed more fluid than before, as if I were watching it shift and distort. Its grin spread even wider, teeth sharp and glistening in the dim light. Instinct kicked in, and I ducked deeper behind the crates just as it fully entered. Then came the moment that made my heart stutter. The creature paused, tilting its head as if it could smell me. It took a slow step forward, and I heard a sharp intake of breath that sounded almost human. "Kevin," I blurted out, hoping, praying that somewhere deep down my friend still existed. "Is that you?" The creature screeched, a sound that rattled the walls, drowning out the faint echo of my own voice. It flinched, then moved back, swiping its arm wildly, knocking over a stack of old crates. This was my chance. I scrambled back against the far wall, edging my way in the opposite direction. I needed to reach the door at the back of the cabin, or at least find another tool. Every fiber of my being screamed to escape. As the creature continued its tirade, I slipped out of the storage room into the hallway. Before I could take in my surroundings, a noise made my blood freeze. There was a second shadow, darker and more menacing than the first. It glided toward me, its form shifting like smoke. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. "Help us," came Kevin's voice again. This time it was right behind me, echoing in my mind, mixing horror and familiarity into a whirlpool of dread. "Kevin?" I shouted over my shoulder, doubt piling on doubt. "Is that really you?" The shadow stopped, and then something unexpected happened. The form flickered, and for a brief moment I saw Kevin's face twisted in anguish. Fear surged within me. If I didn't act fast, I could lose my chance to help him or end up like him. "Wait!" I yelled desperately. "I'm coming!" I needed to move to confront whatever this horror was, but was I ready to face the truth? Just then, lights in the cabin flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Everything trembled. I knew it was only going to get worse as I took a shaky step forward, uncertain but determined, not knowing if I was walking toward hope or into the abyss. I took a step, but the shadowy figure stood frozen, blocking my way. The air thickened, suffocating me with the sheer weight of its presence. Behind me, the creature from the storage room let out another low growl, a reminder that I was surrounded. Panic set in. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. "Kevin?" I called, even though I was beginning to doubt myself. "If you can hear me, I'm coming to get you." My voice trembled in the silence, but it was the only tether to reality I had left.
To my surprise, the shadow flickered again, this time showing Kevin's features even clearer. His eyes were wide with fear and pleading. "Help!" His voice was strained, more echo than flesh. "You have to get out!" Before I could respond, the creature lunged forward, its elongated limbs reaching for me. I flung myself aside, narrowly missing its grasp, and dashed for the nearest door at the end of the hall. My heart raced, urging me to move faster, but the darkness pressed in around me, almost as if it had a mind of its own. I reached the door, turning the handle with frantic hands. It wouldn't budge. I yanked at it, panic rising as I glanced back to see the creature had regained its balance and was now closing in on me. The cabin felt alive, groaning and creaking as if it were shifting to trap me inside. In that moment of desperation, something flickered in the back of my mind. The old camping stories we told around the fire, tales of lost souls in cursed woods.
Those stories felt more like warnings than entertainment now. I cursed under my breath, suddenly aware that I had entered a world where those stories were more real than I had ever imagined. "Kevin, where are you?" I shouted again, hoping for some sign of the boy I knew. "Find the light," he whispered, and I caught a glimpse of hope through the terror that enveloped me. Light. There had to be a source of it somewhere in this dark labyrinth. Taking a deep breath, I shifted my focus, my eyes scanning the room for anything that glimmered. Behind me, the creature growled again, echoing Kevin's warning as if urging me to move. Instinctively, I ducked into an alcove on my left, making myself as small as possible. It wasn't a solid plan, but I couldn't think clearly. I listened intently, the sounds of my own breathing mixing with the creature's heavy footsteps. Then, just as the darkness felt like it was swallowing me whole, I saw it, a flicker of light spilling from an open door at the far end of the hallway. Without a moment to waste, I darted toward it, my legs pumping hard. The creature let out a furious shriek behind me, and time felt distorted as I raced toward the light with every bit of energy I could muster. I reached the door, flinging it open, and as I crossed the threshold, the warmth of light enveloped me like a comforting embrace. But then a realization hit me. The shadows behind were not the end. They were waiting for me, watching. As I caught my breath, I faced the room ahead. It was filled with mismatched furniture, old photographs, and strange artifacts that shifted when I blinked. They felt alive, filled with stories of their own, secrets that would either help me or lead me deeper down the rabbit hole. "Kevin!" I shouted into the room, realizing how desperately I hoped to find him. The silence that followed was deafening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was lurking, something more sinister than anything I'd faced so far. And that's when I heard it. The whispering. It snaked through the air, beckoning. "Join us!" I could feel the weight of the whisper settling over me, like a fog creeping in to shroud the brightness of the room. Heart racing, I shook my head to dispel the beckoning voices curling around me. "No!" I yelled, an instinctive rejection of that promise of dark comfort. I took a step toward the far wall, a primitive urge to find a way out coursing through me. "Kevin!" I cried again, desperation creeping into my voice. My feet hesitated over the floorboards, watching for movement in the shadows. I could still hear the creature behind me, can still feel it pressing against the threshold, the silence behind me a gaping maw waiting to swallow me whole. But the light in front of me felt stronger now. I took another determined step forward, and then another. The room was a strange melange of memories caught in time, but I had no time to analyze. I felt the pressing danger behind me slipping away as I moved closer to the light. Suddenly, an object caught my eye. A battered lantern perched on a cluttered side table. My heart leapt. I dashed toward it, my fingers closing around the cold metal. I fumbled with the oil canister, hands shaking as I poured the liquid into the lantern's bowl, racing against the growing shadows that thrummed behind me. As I struck the flint, sparks flew and a flame flickered to life, illuminating the odd artifacts around me. My heart surged with a cautious hope. Then the door I had left ajar creaked open behind me, and in an instant the light of the lantern flared, revealing the creatures' faces, twisted and awful. They had come for me again, showing the depth of their dark hunger. "Let us in," they hissed in a chorus. I felt a surge of terror at their twisted forms, but I refused to allow fear to grip me. With the lantern in hand, I faced them, the flickering light casting their shadows against the wall in wild silhouettes. "Stay back," I shouted, raising the lantern defiantly.
The creature closest to me recoiled, a moment of hesitation lingering in the air. The light burned like a barrier, and I could sense their resistance to its glow. "We can help you," it whispered, but I didn't trust that voice, not now. The night and its horrors had wanted to lure me in and trap me as they had Kevin and the others. I understood what Kevin's last words meant. Find the light. I had found it, but would it be enough? The creatures wavered momentarily, and I took my chance. I rushed back toward the doorway, heart pounding as I shouted, "I won't let you take me." I bolted past them, almost feeling the cold breath of the darkness brushing against my shoulder, drawn toward the flickering light like moths to flames. Outside, the cabin loomed, a foreboding silhouette against the now stormy sky. I could feel the whispering urgency behind me, chasing me. I sprinted across the clearing, desperate to escape before they could close in around me again. It was a blur as I dashed into the woods, guided only by instinct. The lantern still lit my way, casting a soft glow that cut through the encroaching shadows. A brief glance behind me revealed the door swinging wide, the figure sneering in the dim light. I pushed myself harder, knowing that I wouldn't be safe until I left the cursed forest behind. As I ran, I could still hear Kevin's voice whispering through the night, "Help us!" And I couldn't shake the feeling that as much as I had escaped, a part of me remained trapped in that unsettling darkness. Would they come for me again? The woods grew denser, shadows curling around me, dimming the lantern's light. My breaths came in ragged gasps, and I felt the ground shifting unnaturally beneath my feet, as if the forest itself were aware of my departure. I had to keep moving. At last, I spotted the edge of the woods, a distant cabin on the horizon.
It felt surreal as I drew closer. The quiet felt like a cocoon wrapping around me, a place that offered a fleeting sense of safety. I stumbled toward it, eyes darting back into the shadows, half expecting something to leap out at me. But I emerged from the trees intact, heart racing in triumph. For now, I was free. But could I ever truly escape what had happened? The cabin echoed in my memory. The faces, the whispers, they would remain with me, haunting the edges of my mind. I turned for one last glance back at the woods, tempestuous and alive with shadows. The lantern flickered in my grasp, an ember of hope in the dark. As I made my way to the unoccupied cabin, I could still feel the anxiety clinging to me like the mist. Sometimes I wonder if the stories we shared by the fire were just that, stories. Or perhaps they were warnings, veiled in fiction. I could still see the flicker of Kevin's face, a plea echoing in my soul, reminding me that even if I had escaped, the night in those woods didn't forget. And so, as I locked the cabin door and sat in the trembling quiet, I felt the slow creep of shadows at the corners of my mind. I would never know what happened to the others, what terrifying secrets the forest still held. As the storm rolled in, I contemplated the darkness and its tales, uneasy with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the whispers had only just begun to speak their truths.